The gleaming corridors of Unity Station hummed with anticipation as Ambassador Maya Patel straightened her Navy diplomatic uniform. Earth's first official meeting with the Xylaxian Empire's representatives was minutes away, and every detail had to be perfect. She had spent months studying their preliminary cultural reports, yet nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. The station's AI announced the approaching Xylaxian shuttle, and Maya took her position at the head of the welcoming committee. As the airlock cycled, she noticed her security chief, Marcus Rodriguez, step slightly behind her, standard human protocol for diplomatic meetings. The airlock doors parted with a soft hiss, revealing a tall, willowy figure with iridescent scales that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. The Xylaxian's 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked in rapid succession as they adjusted to the station's lighting. But it was the alien's reaction to the welcoming party that proved most surprising. "Why does your security officer stand in such a vulnerable position?" The Xylaxian's translator rendered their words in perfectly modulated English, though there was no mistaking the concern in their tone. "Surely your species hasn't survived this long by placing your warriors in tactically disadvantageous positions." Maya managed to maintain her diplomatic smile. "I'm Ambassador Maya Patel, and I'm actually the lead representative. Security Chief Rodriguez is positioned according to our protocols." The Xylaxian's upper eyes widened while the lower pair narrowed, an expression Maya would later learn indicated deep confusion. "I am Valera, third speaker of the Xylaxian Diplomatic Corps." "You're saying your dominant representative deliberately takes the most exposed position? This seems inefficient." "It's a sign of leadership in our culture," Maya explained, gesturing toward the conference room. "Please, after you." Valera didn't move. "You wish me to enter an unknown space ahead of you? Is this some form of test?" Maya's carefully planned welcome was quickly unraveling. "Not at all. In human culture, it's a gesture of respect and courtesy to allow others to go first, especially in formal situations." "Fascinating." Valera's scales rippled with what might have been interest. In Xylaxian society, leaders always enter last, after their security teams have verified the safety of a space. To do otherwise would be considered reckless or even insulting to one's protective detail. Marcus couldn't quite suppress his chuckle, earning him a sharp look from Maya. "Perhaps," she suggested diplomatically, "we could enter together. A symbolic gesture of equal standing between our peoples." Valera's scales shifted to a lighter shade of blue, a sign of approval, Maya hoped. "An acceptable compromise. Though I must document this peculiar human custom for further study. Your species continues to defy our expectations." As they walked side by side into the conference room, Maya noticed Valera's careful observation of every human interaction. The alien diplomat seemed particularly intrigued when Marcus held the door for both of them. "Your males deliberately placed themselves in servile positions?" Valera asked once they were seated. "This contradicts our understanding of human physiology. Are your females not generally smaller in stature?" "It's not about servitude," Maya explained, feeling like she was navigating a diplomatic minefield. "It's about respect and courtesy. In modern human society, we believe in equality regardless of gender. Yet you maintain these ritualistic behaviors that seem to place females in positions of both privilege and vulnerability simultaneously." Valera's 4 eyes blinked in alternating pairs. "Most intriguing. Perhaps this explains how your species has achieved such rapid technological advancement. Your social structures appear to operate on completely counterintuitive principles." Maya couldn't help but smile. "I suppose when you put it that way, some of our customs might seem paradoxical. But that's why these cultural exchanges are so important. We each have much to learn from one another." "Indeed." Valera's scales shifted through a complex pattern of colors. "Though I must warn you, Ambassador Patel, my report to the Imperial Council regarding human social customs will require extensive footnotes." As the meeting progressed, Maya found herself repeatedly explaining what she had always taken for granted. Why did humans pull out chairs for each other? Why did they insist on holding doors? Each explanation seemed to both fascinate and perplex Valera further. By the end of their first session, Maya had gained a new perspective on human customs herself. Through Valera's eyes, she began to see how many of their ingrained behaviors might appear bizarre or even counterintuitive to an outside observer. Yet somehow, this recognition of their differences seemed to create a foundation for understanding. As they concluded the meeting, Valera made an unexpected gesture. They stepped aside and motioned for Maya to exit first. "I believe this is your custom," they said, their scales flickering with what might have been amusement. "Though I must note that my security detail will be most distressed." Maya smiled, recognizing the significance of this small concession. "Thank you, third speaker. Perhaps we're already learning from each other." "Perhaps," Valera agreed, their four eyes gleaming. "Though I suspect understanding why humans deliberately choose vulnerability as a sign of strength will require much more study." As Maya watched the Zylaxian delegation depart, she couldn't help but wonder what other cultural surprises awaited them. This was just the beginning of what promised to be a fascinating journey of mutual discovery, assuming they could navigate the maze of cultural differences that lay ahead. 3 weeks into the diplomatic mission, Unity Station's observation deck became an unlikely classroom for interspecies cultural studies. Maya found Valera standing before the expansive viewport, their scales reflecting the distant starlight as Earth rotated slowly below them. "Your planet's oceans still perplex me," Valera said without turning. "So much water, yet your species chose to build cities on land. Highly inefficient." Maya moved to stand beside the Zylaxian diplomat. "Not all of our cities are on land. We have underwater settlements too, though they're relatively new." "Ah yes, your species' fascinating habit of spreading in all possible directions simultaneously." Valera's scales shifted to a contemplative blue-green. "Much like your social structures. I've been observing your crew's interactions, and I must admit, they continue to confound me." Maya noticed Lieutenant Sofia Martinez approaching with a data pad, and she could already anticipate Valera's next cultural observation. Sofia stopped and saluted before handing the pad to Maya. "The latest diplomatic schedule, Ambassador. Captain Chen asked me to inform you that he's adjusted the security protocols to accommodate the Zylaxian delegation's concerns." Sofia's professional demeanor was perfect, but Maya caught the slight smile at the corners of her mouth. After Sofia departed, Valera's upper eyes tracked her movement while the lower pair remained fixed on Maya. "Your military hierarchy particularly interests me. That officer, she holds a position of authority, yet she delivers messages personally. In Zylaxian forces, such tasks would be delegated to automated systems or junior ranks. Human military structures have evolved over centuries," Maya explained. "We've found that personal interaction often leads to better communication and stronger team dynamics. But surely this creates unnecessary complications. For instance, I observed Captain Chen yesterday, assisting a maintenance crew with a minor repair. On a Zylaxian vessel, such behavior would be seen as diminishing his authority." Maya smiled, remembering the incident. "Actually, it often has the opposite effect. When leaders are willing to work alongside their team, it typically increases respect and loyalty." Valera's scales rippled with what Maya had learned to recognize as skepticism. "Your species deliberately inverts traditional power structures, yet somehow maintains functional hierarchy." "Fascinating." Their conversation was interrupted by a group of off-duty crew members entering the observation deck, laughing and chatting amongst themselves. Maya noticed how Valera's posture stiffened slightly as they observed the casual interactions between male and female crew members. "The informality," Valera said quietly. "It never ceases to amaze me. In Zylaxian society, such casual mixing of ranks and genders would be considered problematic." "How so?" Maya prompted, genuinely curious. "Our society is built on clear distinctions. Each individual's role is defined by their capabilities and genetic predispositions. We find comfort in this order. Valera's scales shifted to a deeper shade. Yet humans seem to thrive in ambiguity. Your females can be warriors or diplomats, your males can be nurturers or leaders. There are no fixed patterns. Some would say that's our greatest strength, Maya suggested. Flexibility allows us to adapt, to find new solutions to old problems. Valera turned all four eyes toward her. Perhaps. But it also creates confusion. For instance, your custom of ladies first, we've discussed it extensively, yet I still struggle to understand how it coexists with your principles of equality. It's a tradition that's evolved over time, Maya explained. Originally, it might have had different implications, but now it's simply one of many ways we show respect to others, regardless of gender. Yet it remains primarily directed toward females. Valera pressed. This seems contradictory. Human culture is full of contradictions, Maya admitted. We've learned to embrace them rather than try to eliminate them. Sometimes, paradoxes can be productive. Valera's scales flickered through several colors before settling on a contemplative violet. This morning, I observed something that exemplifies this paradox. Captain Chen was in a tactical meeting with his security team. The female tactical officer, Commander Roberts, presented a strategy that contradicted the captain's initial assessment. In Xylaxian culture, such a challenge would be seen as insubordination. And what happened? Maya asked, though she could guess. The captain not only accepted the contradiction but praised the commander's insight. He altered the entire security protocol based on her suggestion. Valera's tone carried a mix of disbelief and admiration. When I questioned him about it later, he said something I've been processing ever since: good leaders know when to lead and when to follow. Maya nodded. It's a fundamental principle of modern human leadership. Authority isn't about always being right or maintaining rigid control, it's about creating an environment where everyone can contribute their best. Even if it means placing oneself in a vulnerable position. Valera's scales shifted to a new color Maya hadn't seen before. Like your custom of entering rooms first or offering the most protected position to others. Especially then, Maya confirmed. True strength often comes from being willing to show vulnerability. Valera was quiet for a long moment, their scales slowly cycling through various shades as they processed this concept. Ambassador Patel, I believe I owe you an apology. When I first arrived, I thought human customs were simply illogical, perhaps even primitive. Now I begin to see that they are far more complex, and possibly more sophisticated, than I initially understood. That's high praise coming from a Xylaxian, Maya said with a smile. Though I hope you know that we find your customs equally fascinating and worthy of study. Indeed. Valera's scales brightened slightly. Perhaps then, you would be willing to join me in a traditional Xylaxian greeting ceremony tomorrow? I warn you, it involves maintaining complete stillness for approximately 20 of your Earth minutes. Maya laughed. I'd be honored. Though I have to ask, will I be expected to go first? Valera's scales flickered with what Maya now recognized as amusement. Ambassador, I believe we can arrange to begin simultaneously. After all, isn't that what diplomacy is about? Finding new ways to move forward together. The first warning came as a subtle vibration through Unity Station's deck plates. Maya was in the middle of explaining the concept of dance to Valera when the station's AI cut through their conversation with an urgent alert. Warning. Micrometeoroid collision detected in Sector 7. Hull integrity compromised. Emergency protocols initiated. Maya watched as Valera's scales instantly shifted to a deep crimson, a color she'd never seen before. The Xylaxian's four eyes widened in alternating pairs as the gravity of the situation became clear. Ambassador, Valera's translator struggled to keep up with their rapid speech. Your station's protective shields, they should have prevented this. The meteor shower wasn't due for another week, Maya replied, already moving toward the emergency control center. Something must have changed their trajectory. The station's corridors filled with organized chaos as crew members rushed to their emergency stations. Maya noticed how Valera observed with both surprise and interest as female security officers took point positions, while male medical staff coordinated evacuation protocols. They reached the control center just as Captain Chen was pulling up the damage assessment. The holographic display showed a spreading web of fractures around the impact point, threatening to compromise an entire section of the station. The automated repair systems are offline, Commander Roberts reported, her fingers flying over the control panel. We need to manually seal that breach before we lose the whole sector. Valera stepped forward, scales now pulsing with urgent patterns. Your repair crews, they will need protection from vacuum. We have specialized equipment aboard our ship that could. An explosion rocked the station, cutting off Valera's words. New warning lights flashed across the display as secondary systems began to fail. We don't have time to wait for equipment, Captain Chen announced. Commander Roberts, take a team and get that breach sealed. We have exactly 17 minutes before structural integrity fails completely. Maya saw Valera's scales ripple with shock as Roberts immediately began assembling her team, a mix of male and female engineers and security personnel. You're sending your females into the danger zone first. I'm sending my best people, Chen replied firmly. Gender is irrelevant when lives are at stake. Before anyone could react, Robert's voice came through the comm system. Captain, the damage is worse than we thought. We need someone small enough to get through the maintenance shaft to reach the primary seal controls. Everyone on my team is too large. Maya and Valera exchanged looks. They both knew what that meant. The Xylaxian's slender build would be perfect for the task. I volunteer, Valera said, their scales shifting to a determined silver. Though I must note that in Xylaxian protocol, sending a diplomatic representative into danger would be considered. There's no time for protocol, Maya interrupted. I'm going with you. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as they donned emergency suits. Maya couldn't help but notice how Valera's movements became more efficient once they understood the urgency of the situation. Traditional roles and customs were forgotten in the face of imminent disaster. Together, they crawled through the cramped maintenance shaft, guided by Robert's voice through their comms. The damaged section groaned around them, metal stress echoing through the narrow space. The manual override is just ahead, Roberts instructed. But you'll need to cross an exposed section. The artificial gravity is unstable there. Valera paused at the intersection, their suit sensors scanning the area ahead. Ambassador, by your customs, I should insist you go first. Valera, Maya said firmly, right now we're not diplomats. We're just two people trying to save lives. Protocol doesn't matter. The Xylaxian scales shifted to a color Maya had never seen before, a brilliant, determined gold. Then we moved together. Working in tandem, they navigated the exposed section, using their tethers to anchor each other as they reached the override panel. The station's structure groaned ominously around them as they worked to realign the seal controls. 30 seconds until structural failure, the AI announced calmly. Maya's fingers flew over the control panel while Valera used their superior strength to hold the manual release steady. Neither spoke about protocol or customs as they focused on their task, moving with instinctive coordination. The override engaged just as the final warning sounded. Emergency force fields snapped into place, and the threatening groan of metal subsided to a manageable level. Breach contained, Robert's voice came through their comms, relief evident in her tone. Good work, both of you. As they made their way back through the maintenance shaft, Maya noticed Valera's scales had settled into a new pattern, one that seemed to shimmer between gold and silver. Ambassador, Valera said once they were safely back in the main corridor, I believe I owe you an apology. I have spent weeks studying human customs, particularly your unusual approach to gender roles, but I never truly understood until now. What changed? Maya asked, helping Valera remove their helmet. In that shaft, when survival was at stake, I saw the truth of your species' strength. It lies not in rigid adherence to protocol or traditional roles, but in your ability to adapt, to let capability rather than convention guide your actions. Valera's 4 eyes focused intently on Maya. When you suggested we move together, it went against both our culture's protocols, yet it was undeniably the most effective solution. Maya smiled. Sometimes the best diplomatic breakthroughs come from crisis situations. When we're forced to see beyond our preconceptions. Indeed. Valera's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. Though I must admit, I'm now even more confused about your ladies first custom. Perhaps we should schedule another cultural exchange session to discuss it further. A small explosion of laughter escaped Maya before she could contain it. Even after facing death together, some things hadn't changed. I'd like that, she said. Though maybe this time, we can discuss some Xylaxian customs instead. The Unity Station's conference room had been transformed. Holographic displays showcased both Earth and Xylaxian cultural imagery, while the air held the subtle scent of both human coffee and the mineral-rich tea the Xylaxians preferred. Maya watched as Valera studied the proposed exchange program outline, their scales shifting through thoughtful shades of blue and green. You suggest placing human females in leadership positions within Xylaxian military units? Valera's upper eyes blinked rapidly while their lower pair remained fixed on the document. The Imperial Council will find this challenging. No more challenging than placing Xylaxian diplomats in human civilian administrative roles, Maya countered, gesturing to another section of the proposal. The point is to push both our peoples out of their comfort zones. The door chimed, and Commander Roberts entered, carrying a data pad. Her presence had become increasingly common in these meetings since the meteor crisis, her practical experience proving invaluable to their planning. The preliminary volunteer numbers are in, Roberts announced, taking a seat. We have more applicants than expected from both sides. Apparently, word of your joint heroics during the crisis has sparked considerable interest. Valera's scales flickered with what Maya now recognized as embarrassment. Perhaps we should focus less on individual actions and more on systemic changes. For instance, these proposed mixed-gender emergency response teams. They're based on what we learned during the crisis, Roberts explained. When we stopped worrying about traditional roles and focused on individual capabilities, we achieved better results. Maya pulled up a holographic simulation showing various emergency scenarios. Look at these efficiency ratings. Teams combining Xylaxian physical capabilities with human adaptive thinking outperform traditional single-species units by 40%. The numbers are compelling, Valera admitted, their scales shifting to an analytical gray. But there's more at stake than mere efficiency. These changes would fundamentally alter both our society's power structures. Isn't that exactly what we need? Maya leaned forward, her voice passionate. Think about it, Valera. When we first met, you couldn't understand why humans would put women in vulnerable positions as a sign of respect. Now you're helping design programs that will place Xylaxian males under human female command. An irony not lost on me, Valera replied, their scales rippling with amusement. Though I must note that your proposal to have human males serve in traditionally female-led Xylaxian medical units is equally revolutionary. Commander Roberts tapped her data pad, bringing up new statistics. The psychological assessments show that's exactly what makes these programs valuable. By challenging both species' preconceptions about gender roles, we create opportunities for genuine growth. A notification chimed, and a new figure appeared on their screens, the latest Cultural Integration Index. The graph showed a steady upward trend in cross-species understanding since the crisis. Look at this spike in positive interactions, Maya pointed out. It started right after we worked together in that maintenance shaft. One incident of practical cooperation did more for interspecial relations than months of formal diplomatic meetings. Valera's scales shifted to that unique gold-silver pattern that had first appeared during the crisis. You believe we can replicate that effect on a larger scale? I believe we have to try, Maya replied. Both our species are exploring the galaxy, encountering new civilizations. We need to learn to see beyond our traditional assumptions. Roberts pulled up another simulation, this one showing potential long-term outcomes. Based on our projections, these exchange programs could lead to significant advances in both cultures. Xylaxian military efficiency combined with human adaptability. Human innovation enhanced by Xylaxian precision. Valera stood and moved to the viewport, their reflection merging with the stars beyond. When I first arrived here, I thought my mission was simply to understand human customs. Now I realize it was to help both our species evolve beyond them. That's exactly what this program can achieve. Maya joined them at the viewport. But it will only work if we're willing to lead by example. Valera turned all four eyes to her. You're suggesting we personally participate in the exchange? Why not? You've already proven you can work effectively under human female leadership during a crisis. And I'd be honored to learn Xylaxian command protocols. The Xylaxian scales cycled through several colors before settling on a determined purple. The Imperial Council will require significant convincing. They still haven't fully processed my reports about human gender dynamics. Then we'll show them, Roberts interjected, pulling up a new document. We've prepared a demonstration program. A joint emergency response exercise, broadcast live to both Earth and Xylaxia. Show both our peoples what's possible when we move beyond traditional roles. Valera's scales brightened. A public demonstration would make it harder for conservatives on either side to dismiss the results. Though I must ask, who will go first? Maya laughed, the sound filled with genuine warmth. I think we've moved beyond that question, don't you? We'll do what we did in that maintenance shaft. We'll move forward together. Together, Valera agreed, their scales settling into that now familiar gold-silver pattern. Though I suspect this is just the beginning of a much longer journey. As they turned back to the detailed planning, Maya couldn't help but feel they were on the verge of something revolutionary. They weren't just building a cultural exchange program, they were laying the foundation for a fundamental shift in how both species viewed themselves and each other. 6 months after the crisis that changed everything, Unity Station's main auditorium was filled to capacity. Representatives from Earth and Xylaxia gathered to witness the graduation ceremony of the first joint cultural exchange program. Maya stood at the podium, looking out over the diverse crowd, humans and Xylaxians sitting together, their traditional seating protocols forgotten in their shared excitement. Valera stood beside her, their scales shimmering with that now familiar gold-silver pattern that had become synonymous with human Xylaxian cooperation. The graduating class before them represented something unprecedented, 20 humans and 20 Xylaxians who had completed intensive cross-cultural training. When I first arrived on Unity Station, Valera began, their translator perfectly conveying the emotion in their voice, I was confused by the human custom of ladies first. It seemed illogical, even dangerous by Xylaxian standards. Today, I understand that what appeared to be a simple courtesy was actually a symbol of something much more profound, the human ability to transform traditional power structures into bridges of understanding. Maya stepped forward. And we humans have learned equally valuable lessons from our Xylaxian friends. Their emphasis on capability over convention has helped us examine our own unconscious biases. Together, we've discovered that true strength lies not in rigid adherence to tradition, but in our willingness to evolve beyond it. The graduates before them were living proof of this evolution. Human women who had mastered Xylaxian combat techniques stood alongside Xylaxian males who had excelled in human diplomatic protocols. Each graduate represented countless small victories over ingrained prejudices and assumptions. Commander Roberts, who had been instrumental in designing the training programs, activated a holographic display showing the results of their 6-month experiment. The statistics were undeniable. Mixed teams had consistently outperformed traditional units in every metric. But perhaps our greatest achievement, Maya continued, isn't measured in statistics. It's measured in moments like this morning, when I watched a human male officer naturally defer to a Xylaxian female's expertise in engineering, while a Xylaxian male sought advice from a human female tactical specialist. These interactions, once unthinkable, are now becoming routine. Valera's scales rippled with pride as they addressed the graduates directly. You have done more than master each other's protocols. You have proven that progress is possible when we have the courage to question our most basic assumptions about gender, power, and leadership. The ceremony proceeded with the presentation of dual citizenship certificates, another unprecedented development. Each graduate would now serve as a bridge between worlds, carrying their transformed perspectives back to their respective societies. As the formal proceedings concluded, Maya noticed something remarkable. The humans and Xylaxians weren't segregating themselves as they had in earlier gatherings. They moved through the crowd naturally, their interactions fluid and unself-conscious. Look, she whispered to Valera, no one's worried about who goes first anymore. Valera's scales shifted through a complex pattern of colors before settling into a new shade, one Maya had never seen before. Perhaps that is the most significant measure of our success. When protocols become fluid rather than rigid, when tradition serves connection rather than separation. The celebration was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth's Central Command. A colony on the outer rim was facing a natural disaster, requiring immediate assistance. Without hesitation, Captain Chen turned to the newly graduated teams. This is what you've trained for, he announced. Who's ready to put these new protocols into action? The response was immediate and unified. Humans and Xylaxians stepped forward together, already organizing themselves into the mixed teams that had proven so effective during their training. Maya felt a surge of pride as she watched them prepare for deployment. Remember when you first arrived, and you couldn't understand why humans would put themselves in vulnerable positions? A lifetime ago, Valera replied, their scales shimmering. Now I understand that what appears to be vulnerability can actually be a source of tremendous strength. Just as what appears to be a simple matter of social protocol can become a catalyst for profound change. As they watched the mixed rescue teams board their ships, Maya realized they had achieved something far beyond their original diplomatic mission. They hadn't just bridged the gap between two cultures, they had created something entirely new. There's still so much work to be done, she mused. So many other species to connect with, so many other cultural barriers to overcome. Valera's scales shifted to that determined gold-silver pattern. Then we'll do what we've always done. We'll move forward together, neither species first or last, but side by side. Maya smiled, remembering their first awkward meeting. Together, she agreed. Though I have to admit, I'm going to miss explaining why humans hold doors open for each other. Perhaps, Valera replied, their translator conveying a hint of amusement, we should focus our next cultural exchange program on explaining why Xylaxians consider it polite to stand completely still for 20 minutes when greeting elderly relatives. As laughter filled the room, human and Xylaxian alike, Maya knew they had achieved something remarkable. They had turned a simple misunderstanding about social protocols into a movement that was transforming both their societies. And this was just the beginning.